Here is a quiet reason a lot of good businesses struggle with support, and it has nothing to do with eligibility. Their project is not really a project yet. It is a wish, a direction, a vague sense that things should be better, and you cannot fund a vague sense of better. Support is built around projects, things with a shape, a start, an end, and a point. And if what you bring is a cloud rather than a shape, no amount of qualifying will help you. The good news is that scoping, turning a fuzzy intention into a clear project, is a skill you can learn, and it makes your business better, whether or not any funding follows. So in the next few minutes, we are going to work through how to give a project edges. One note before we begin. This channel is educational only. We are not a government agency. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by Go Business, Enterprise Singapore, or any government body, and nothing here is official advice. We name no schemes, no criteria, and no figures because those change over time. So we will always point you back to the official source, gobusiness.gov.sg, to confirm what actually applies to your situation before you rely on any of it. What scoping actually means? Scoping is the act of drawing a line around a piece of work so that everyone can see what is inside it and what is not. It answers a small set of stubborn questions. What exactly are we doing? When does it start and when is it finished? What will be true at the end that is not true now? What is deliberately left out? That is almost the whole of it, and yet most owners never do it, because in the day-to-day of running a business, you carry your intentions loosely and act on instinct. That works for operations, but it fails the moment you need someone outside your head to understand and back what you are planning. A scoped project is simply an intention that has been made visible and finite, and making it visible and finite is what turns it into something you can plan, resource, and possibly fund. Why a fuzzy project cannot be funded? Put yourself on the other side of the table for a second. Someone is being asked to support a project, and their whole job is to understand what it is, judge whether it is sensible, and check that it does what it claims. A fuzzy project makes every one of those tasks impossible. If the work has no clear boundary, no one can tell whether it is finished. If it has no defined objective, no one can tell whether it succeeded. If it blends into everything else the business does, no one can tell what the support actually paid for. Fuzziness is not just unattractive, it is genuinely unassessable, and support cannot be given to something that cannot be assessed. This is not bureaucracy for its own sake. It is the same clarity you would want if you were lending your own money to a friend. Give the work edges, and it becomes something a reasonable person can say yes to. Draw a boundary around the project. The first act of scoping is drawing a boundary, deciding what belongs to this project and what does not. This is harder than it sounds, because real improvements tend to sprawl. You start with a plan to fix one process, and suddenly it touches your systems, your team, your suppliers, and half your operations. Resist that. A good project is a slice, not the whole cake. Pick a boundary you can defend, and be just as clear about what is outside it as what is inside. The things you exclude are not abandoned. They are simply other projects for other times. A tight boundary is a strength, not a limitation, because it makes the work finishable, resourceable, and understandable. Owners who cannot draw a boundary end up with projects that are always almost done and never quite complete, which is the worst possible position to be in. Start and finish, defined. Every real project has two moments that a wish does not, a beginning and an end. Decide when the project starts, which is usually not today, and decide what event marks it as finished. Finished does not mean perfect, and it does not mean the business has stopped improving. It means this defined piece of work is complete. Without a defined finish, a project runs forever, quietly absorbing time and attention, and never delivering the clean result you can point to. With one, you have something that can be planned backwards, resourced properly, and judged fairly at the end. If you find you cannot say when the project would be finished, that is a strong sign it is not yet a project, but a permanent aspiration. And permanent aspirations, however worthy, are not the kind of thing support is designed around. One clear objective, not five. The most common scoping mistake is trying to solve everything at once. An owner sits down to define a project and, because so much could be better, ends up with an objective that is really 5 objectives wearing a single coat. This weakens everything. A project with one clear aim is easy to explain, easy to resource, and easy to judge. A project with 5 is a program, and it collapses under its own weight. So force yourself to choose the single most important outcome this project is for, and let the others wait or become separate efforts. The discipline of choosing one is uncomfortable, precisely because the others feel important too. But a focused project that actually finishes will do more for your business than an ambitious one that never resolves. One objective, stated plainly, is the backbone of a scope that holds together. Name what will be different at the end. A well-scoped project can answer a simple question: what will be true when this is done that is not true now? This is the heart of the whole thing, because it is where a project stops being activity and becomes a result. Do not describe what you will buy or do. Describe what will change. Perhaps a task that took a day will take an hour. Perhaps your team will be able to do something they cannot do today. Perhaps you will be reaching customers you currently cannot reach. Name that difference as concretely as you honestly can, because it is what makes the project worth doing and what lets anyone judge whether it worked. A project defined by its purchases is a shopping list. A project defined by its changes is something with a point, and the point is what you are really being asked to justify. Break the project into concrete parts. Once the boundary and the objective are clear, a project becomes real when you can break it into concrete parts, the actual steps and pieces that make it happen. This does two things. It proves to you, before anyone else, that the project is genuinely doable and not just desirable, because vague projects fall apart the moment you try to list their parts. And it gives the whole thing a texture that a reasonable person can follow, a sense that this is a real plan rather than a hopeful gesture. You do not need extravagant detail, you need enough that the shape of the work is visible. If you cannot break your project into concrete parts, the problem is not the paperwork. It is that the project is not yet thought through, and that is far better to discover now than after you have committed to it. Separate the project from business as usual. One of the subtlest scoping skills is telling the project apart from your ordinary operations. Support is generally aimed at doing something new or better, not at paying for the things you would be doing anyway. So a project that is really just your normal running costs wearing a project label is a poor fit and an awkward thing to defend. Ask what part of this would happen even if the project did not exist, and draw a line between that ordinary activity and the genuine change on top of it. The change on top is your actual project. This distinction protects you from stretching, keeps your scope honest, and makes the whole thing far cleaner to explain, because you can point at exactly what is different, rather than blurring the new work into the daily grind where no one can see it clearly. There is a sweet spot for the size of a project, and both extremes are unhappy. Too small, and it is barely worth the effort of defining, planning, and reporting. A lot of overhead for very little change. Too large, and it becomes unfinishable, unresourceable, and impossible to keep in view. Right sizing is the art of choosing a project big enough to matter, and small enough to actually compete with the time, people, and attention you honestly have. Be realistic about that last part, because owners routinely scope projects for the business they wish they were running, rather than the one they are. A project you can finish well is worth far more than an impressive one you abandon halfway. When in doubt, make it smaller and finish it. Then let success earn you the right to attempt the next, larger thing. Write the project down, as if explaining it. The final test of a scope is writing it down as though you were explaining it to a sensible outsider who knows nothing about your business. A page is plenty. What is the project? Why does it matter? When does it run? What will be different at the end? What are the main parts? And what is deliberately out of scope? If you can write that cleanly, your project is scoped. If you find yourself waffling, hedging, or unable to fill a section, you have found exactly where your thinking is still fuzzy, and you can go back and sharpen it. This written scope is enormously useful beyond any applications. It keeps the project on track when enthusiasm and distraction pull at it, and it gives everyone involved the same picture, which is worth more than most owners realize. Take your scoped project to the source. With a genuinely scoped project in hand, you are finally in a position to look at support properly. Take your one page to gobusiness.gov.sg and read what is offered against the actual shape of your project, rather than trying to reshape a cloud to fit whatever you find. Because criteria, scheme names, and figures change, we give you none of them here, and the official portal is the only place to confirm what genuinely exists and applies to your project today. A scoped project also lets you tell quickly whether something fits, because a clear shape either matches or it does not. And if nothing matches, you still come out ahead, because you now have a well-defined project you can go and do properly on your own terms, which was the real prize all along. A closing thought. So here is the shift to carry away. You cannot fund a wish, only a project. So the work that matters happens before you ever look at support, in giving your intention edges. Draw a boundary, define a start and a finish, choose one clear objective, and name what will actually be different at the end. Break it into concrete parts. Separate the real change from business as usual. Right-size the ambition to the business you actually run, and write the whole thing on a single page. Remember that everything here is general and educational. We are not a government agency, and we are not affiliated with or endorsed by anyone, and we name no schemes because they change. So take your scoped project to gobusiness.gov.sg and see what genuinely fits it today. If this helped you turn a cloud into a shape, subscribe for more plain English Singapore grant explainers, and we will keep making the hard parts simple.